pathway, the Midland Railway today. Hope you like it. In 1839, a company called the Birmingham and Derby Railway built a railway from Birmingham to Derby. It was engineered by Robert Stephenson, son of George Stephenson. It was mostly flat. The steepest gradient was 1 in 339. Well, that's an extra fact you didn't really want to know. Also in 1839, a company called the Midland Counties Railway built a railway going from Nottingham to Derby. Well, that's still part of the Midland Main Line. In 1840, the Midland Counties Railway Company built a railway going from Trent Junction to Leicester, which is still part of the Midland Main Line, and Leicester to Rugby. Well, the Leicester to Rugby bit was closed in 1961. Trent Junction is halfway between Nottingham and Derby. In 1840, a company called the North Midland Railway built a railway going from Derby to Leeds via Chesterfield and Rotherham. Well, those three companies kept building railways and kept competing with each other, and they were actually driving each other out of business. So in 1844, those three companies all joined together to form the Midland Railway. So the railway joined Nottingham, Derby and Leicester to Rugby, which was on the West Coast Main Line. So the rest of the journey carried on into London Euston. But in the 1850s, there were too many trains at Rugby. So the Midland Railway built a line from Leicester to Hitchin, Hertfordshire. So the Leicester to the Hitchin line went via Market Harborough, Kettering, Wellingborough and Bedford. And I do believe that's all part of the Midland Main Line today as we speak. Well, at the time, 1850s, the Crimean War was taking place. So a lot of corners were cut to cut costs in the building of this extension from Leicester to Hitchin. So it's a bit bendy and a bit hilly, which may go some way to explaining the Midland Railway's small locomotive policy. They love their small locomotives. They love their 440s. And we're looking at one there, the so-called Midland Compound. More about that in a moment. In 1868, it was decided there were too many trains at Hitchin. So there was a line built from Bedford to London St Pancras, which I think is now part of the existing Midland Main Line today in 2025. Well, the Midland Railway expanded a bit more. In the 1870s, they built a line from Settle to Carlisle. It's not really in the Midlands, is it? But you know what? Their railway, their rules. And a line from Chesterfield to Sheffield. And today's modern main line, the Midland Main Line, goes from St Pancras Luton, Bedford, Kettering, Leicester, and a station called East Midlands Parkway. And I'm not exactly sure where it is, it's just a junction. Chesterfield and Sheffield. And in 1902, the Chief Mechanical Engineer of the Midland Railway, Samuel Waite Johnson, who was in that post from 1873 to 1903, designed the locomotive we're looking at, the Midland Compound. A compact, quite powerful, I think it was rated 4p eventually by British Railways. There were 45 of these Midland compounds built. It was modified by Johnson's successor, Dealey. He was there from 1904 to 1909, and his successor, Henry Fowler, from 1909 to 1923. Well, in 1923 we had the grouping. The LMS was formed, the London, Midland and Scottish Railway, and M was Midland. That formed a major part of the LMS. Well, George Hughes took over as Chief Mechanical Engineer of the LMS, but he only lasted 2 years, so Henry Fowler, who was his deputy during that time, became the Chief Mechanical Engineer of the LMS in 1925. And some more compounds were built, pretty much the same as the original Midland compounds, except the driving wheels, I believe, were 1 inch larger. I'm guessing that these Hornby Railroad models do not reflect that detail. I'm going to say these two Hornby models are identical in all ways except for the livery. Anyway, the tenders are different. That's a Fowler tender. It's bigger than the old Midland Railway tender. Well, LMS compound number 1072, built in 1925 and withdrawn in 1955. Well, the LMS compounds were seeing double heading trains on the West Coast Main Line, mostly from Carlisle to Glasgow. And after a while the LMS decided we need some more powerful locomotives. So Fowler designed this one. The first one of the class was called Royal Scot. So they became known as the Royal Scots. In fact, the LMS started a train service in 1927 going from London Euston to Glasgow and Edinburgh called the Royal Scot. This was to rival the LNER that was doing very well in trips to Scotland. We're looking at number 6106, Gordon Highlander, that was built in 1927, rebuilt in 1949, and then withdrawn in 1962. Another Fowler design, the same chassis as the Royal Scot, but a smaller boiler, known as the Baby Scot, also called the Patriot. Well, there were 52 Patriots built, and we're looking at 2 of them, which I'm going to be running today. On the left, in LMS Crimson Lake, 5532 Illustrious, built in April 1933. Rebuilt in 1948 and withdrawn in 1965. And then Bradshaw in British Railways, Brunswick Green, number 45518, built in February 1933, never rebuilt and withdrawn in October 1962. Okay, let's watch some trains.